Hello and welcome to our channel. My name is David and today we will focus on a super important issue, which is how to capitalize data. But first of all, let's start with the definitions. What is capital? What form of capital are we talking about here? Pierre Bourdieu defined the following forms of capital. First of all, economic capital. That is something that all of you know. It's about financial resources, ownership of properties, and things like that that are effectively related to money and assets. It's the most obvious form of capital, and all of you need to be focused on this type of capital if you run business. But let's also not forget about other forms of capital, which are no less important than this one. First of all, I would define symbolic capital. This is sort of derived capital from other forms of capital, but it's about certain prestige and honor that you can leverage in a given society and culture for gaining certain benefits. We are talking here about awards and degrees and titles. These things have a symbolic value, but it's a very important value, and everybody who was ever looking for a job knows that, for example, employers prefer people with academic degree and certain certifications in certain businesses. So it's a very important form of capital. The next form of capital I would like to describe is social capital. Social capital is about networks of relationships. Everybody has certain network of relations. For example, in your work with your colleagues, that's a professional network, or with your friends, or within a local community. All these things have a huge impact. If you, for example, ask somebody for a favor, then most likely all of you know that friends will probably tell you yes, whereas somebody out of your network will probably tell you no. So this form of capital can be converted, as you can see, to other forms of capital. And ultimately, we have cultural capital. That is about certain knowledge and skills that you can use within the society to gain certain advantages. For example, asking somebody for a favor. It's about things like mannerism and language and accents. You know, people pay attention to these things. You speak fluent English, you have certain advantages in English-speaking countries. You already know that. But it's also about things like more materialized, objectified, like arts and book. When you are a famous painter, you again have certain advantages. Now we can also define other forms like education. Education gives you huge advantage within society. So important capital, cultural. What's important to note is that each form of capital is sort of convertible to other forms of capital. It's not like standalone entity. So if you gain in one form of capital, then you sooner or later gain in other forms of capital. Don't forget about it, because most of people think only about economic capital, but if you are building other forms of capital, it's in your advantage, and sooner or later it will pay off as an economic capital. So let's now proceed with the next topic, and that is how company can convert data or gain economic capital from data. There are many ways that are probably already known to you and that are fairly obvious. Let's start with the most obvious one, which is to sell data. Obviously, if you run an e-shop or if you run a huge company that collects huge databases, there are companies that are interested in these data sets, say marketing research companies, advertising companies. So you can sell these data, of course reflecting certain ethical and legal restrictions, but it's perfectly legal. Say anonymized data set can be sold. So this is an obvious way how you can monetize your data. Now let's focus on another obvious way, which is targeted advertising. You've probably noticed that companies like Amazon, Google, and all other big companies follow targeted advertising. That is that they personalize the content of advertisement, so it suits you based on data that they collect about you, like your purchasing history, browsing history, your interests that their complex algorithms based on AI determine that fits to you. This is an obvious way how to monetize. Now let's focus on less obvious ways. One of them is operational efficiency. We are talking here about things like supply chain management. You can improve your supply chain management based on data. Lots of companies and manufacturers do that. That's that famous just-in-time deliveries and so on. So they have like their stock is just full enough and they don't risk having any leftovers. It's also about things like inventory forecasting. So if you have eShop, you probably know that your inventory must have a different structure during the year. These things are predictable and it's easy to do it with modern tools like an analysis of data series, time series, and so on. Now let's focus on less known topics, ways. And I would start with dynamic pricing or pricing strategies in general. Obviously, if you have huge data sets and you are able to collect data quickly, you can adjust pricing based on the state of your competition and demand and market state. It is hugely beneficial because you can increase your margins to maximum and it's a working system. You probably won't be surprised that companies like Amazon use this a lot. So sometimes you have same product, £1 more expensive, another day it's cheaper, and so on. So that's dynamic pricing. If you have data sets, you can convert it into this huge advantage, which gives you competitive advantage. But there are other things like how you can convert your data to capital, economic capital, like customer retention programs and loyalty programs. Obviously, you want to pick right customers for your loyalty programs. This needs to be based on data series, so on huge data sets to determine which customer is the optimal one. And for these customers, you can prepare better prices or special offers, which of course keeps this customer in your environment and are happier to stay long term and do repeated purchases. This is a way how data can help a lot. And with modern tools like AI and machine learning, you can do this in large scale. Then we have other forms like fraud detection and risk management. Fraud detection is hugely beneficial to reduce losses of your company, and there are algorithms which can detect strange behavior of your customers or suppliers or anybody in your ecosystem and warn you in advance or block their activities so you reduce losses. And this is excellent automated risk management based on data. Now we can talk about things like predictive maintenance. Many companies and manufacturers use data to determine the optimal time when to do maintenance. This is like maintenance window, you put it in the best time and you reduce downtime of your services. Most commonly, if you run servers, you probably know when is the time when updates needs to be done, so you optimize your window to this time. Of course, manufacturers know AI and machine learning tools can help you a lot to monitor, or IoT can help you a lot to monitor the state of your components and to determine when is the best time. This is a hugely beneficial way how you can monetize data. There are of course other ways, and all that you need is to have certain creativity and think about it. We also can talk about things like subscription and data as a service, which is modern in a cloud environment. If you have huge data sets and you want to sell them or provide access to them for third parties, you can do it in your own environment, which you have deployed in the cloud, and people then can use like software as a service tools, or you can develop your own software as a service tools to access your data and do their operations locally, of course paying you certain value in return. Of course, we can continue with this list, but I think I've covered the most interesting and important ways. Let me know what you think, what your ideas are in the comment. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for your time and see you next time.